Go.
Okay, Rabbi Yitzchok, welcome back to Yerushalmi Peah Daf. We are Lamed Vav Amud Aleph. We are on Rabbi Yassa right now. We answered the questions about when you acquire something within 4 Amos. And the Gemara is now going to bring a member of Rabbi Yochanan, who argues on the Shlokish. And Rabbi Yochanan is based on the Mishnah in Masechet Gittin, that when you throw a get to a wife who is in the street and it lands close to her, Harav, she is divorced, right? And Rabbi Yochanan said like this: Rabbi Yassa. Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said, Zu, that which we learnt, that when you throw the get and it lands close to the woman she's divorced, that's only begittin. That's only begittin, Masechet came b'matana, as opposed to a gift. If you want to give your friend a gift, and you throw it next to him, he doesn't acquire it yet. You don't acquire a gift within 4 hours, right? And not like Shlokish who holds 4 hours you can acquire it. Actually, Iva, sorry. Get me a glass of water. Thank you. Rabbi Yochanan said his din about a gift. Rishlakish said his words with a metzia, right? And the Gemara is going to explain that each one was talking about a special chidush and telling us the din in 2 different situations. So there's metzia when you throw something as a gift, right? There's matana and metzia. Metzia, you're finding something. Matana is a gift. So let's see. Ruba Rabbi Yochanan, Ruba Rishlakish. There's a chiddush in the words Rabbi Yochanan, and there's a chiddush in the words Rish Lakish. And the Gemara explains the words. So let's see. Ruba de Rish Lakish, who said you can acquire metzia within 4 hours, because we learn from the matana as well, because there's a kavachoma. Because my metzia, when you find something, no one else is giving it to you. No one else is being makneh to you the item. You can acquire within 4 hours. Matana, where someone's giving it to you, they can be acquired in 4 hours. Right? It's much easier to acquire something when someone is extending it out to you, right? As opposed to hefker. And if you can acquire metzia with 4 hours, definitely you can acquire matana. So Rish Lakish is telling you it's a big chiddush, that even a metzia can be acquired with 4 hours and definitely a gift. Ruba, it should be Rabbi Yochanan, the chiddush of Rabbi Yochanan, who said you can't get a matana within 4 hours, and through this we can learn to metzia because kavachayna. My matana, if already a gift, the correct gift is where someone else is giving it to you, and yet you can't acquire it within 4 hours. Metzia, how much more so metzia that cannot be acquired within 4 hours. So Rabbi Yochanan is telling us a chiddush that it works with nothing, and Rabbi Yitzchok is telling us a chiddush that it works with everything. Okay, now Rav Zira asked Rabbi Yassa on the words that were said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, this is Gittin, as opposed to Matana. So Hasi Rav Zira called Rabbi Yassa. Now in that Mishnah in Gittin, where it says you throw a get to the wife, if it's close to her, she's divorced. It says in Kiddushin the same thing applies. If you're a woman with money, right, by throwing the money close to her, I don't know what she thinks about your act of betrothal here. Here, throw a bit of money on the floor. The din is she's mekudeshes. So the din of korevla is not only as far as giving a get, but as far as kiddushin as well. Now, how can Rabbi Yochanan say there's only a din, especially in gittin, and not in kinyonim, because it applies with kiddushin? So Rabbi Yassa answered, Gittin, he kiddushin. Well, they're the same. When he said Zuba Gittin, is kiddushin as well. Right? Just like throwing close to her helps with get, it also helps with kiddushin as well, even though it doesn't help with the kinyan. Now, Rabbi Zira carries on asking on Rabbi Yochanan from that mission itself. V'atanina, it says v'chei le'inyan hachoiv. If a person owes someone money, and the creditor says, the mother says, throw me the money that you owe me, right? And if the mother says that, throw me my debt, and he threw it close to the malva, right? Throw it close to the malva has acquired that money, the debt is repaid, okay? Now here, there's definitely, the malva has to acquire the money with a kinyan, right? Like a gift. And Kudrab Yochanan, you can't acquire a gift by just being close to you. You've got to take it. So how is it going to help? We're saying the creditor can say, throw it to me, and if you throw it close to him, and he acquires it.
Because he said it.
I know he said it, but we're saying if it doesn't help with a gift, then it shouldn't help with paying back a debt. He's not. The money's just close to him. So Rav Yasser answered, the reason why the debtor doesn't have to pay back the debt once it's close to the creditor, you know what the creditor could have said? Zarker layam, throw it in the sea. And the debt would have been repaid. So there's no din that it has to go to the creditor. As long as you follow the instructions, as he said it, then you fulfilled his request. Zarker layam, and the debt will be forgiven. Machala, the din is that the debt is forgiven, even though the creditor didn't acquire the money at all. Huh?
You know, if someone falls, it's not Cohen, you have to actually say that his Dalit Amos is Makna. You actually have to verbalize it.
Well, according to, we have to say that he's happy for it to work. We said if he falls on it, we spoke about that yesterday, didn't we?
Yeah.
So here, we're saying if you throw it close to the creditor, providing he said that, and he said throw it to me, whatever. What was the lashon we had? If he says throw me my money, and you throw it close to him, so we're saying the debt is paid back. Well, the only reason is, so that's the question, does it work with Matana? Does it work? We've got Rav Zira, we've got Yerushalmi Peah Daf. So what's he saying now? The reason why you are exempt from paying back the debt if you throw it close to the creditor, if he said throw it in the sea, you've done what he asked. Right? Even though he didn't take the money at all, he's Mochel Chaim. So the same thing, if the mother says throw me my debt, and you throw it close to him, it could be he's not acquired it yet. He's not kind of it, right? But the loiver is exempt from paying back the debt. Okay? Now, me'ata, if that's the case, that, he can throw it in the sea, then afilu karab l'loiver. If you throw the money closest to the debtor, not the creditor, it should be zacha haloiver. The debtor should be entitled to be exempt from paying back the debt. When the creditor says throw it to me, we're saying, well, if that's the case, as long as you follow his request, you've done, that's enough to pay back the debt. So why must the money be near the creditor? Let it be near the debtor, and he's thrown it.
Yeah.
Who says it has to be near the creditor then? So the debtor should be exempt from the debt, because the creditor said throw the debt, and he did this, and the Chaim should be forgiven, even if it falls closer to the debtor. Or to Ninon, but we learned, Karav la no, ha Chaim. If you throw it, and he throws it at his feet, right? The debtor, I'm afraid he hasn't paid back the debt. The debt's not yet paid. So the Gemara says the reason is, look, if the creditor says throw it till it comes in my domain, and he's not yet given moichel on the debt. It's not the condition of the malveh, really. He's got to go into his domain. Right? He said into my reshus, right? So here as well, when he says throw the debt, it's as if he said, throw it till it comes within my domain. Right? He never thought the money should just be lost like that. Therefore, if the person throws it close to the creditor, it's gone in the reshus of the creditor and the chayiv is paid off. But if he throws it closer to the debtor, it's not yet gone in the area of the malveh, the tanai has not been fulfilled, and the debt is not repaid.
As long
as they're saying whoever's closer to. Yeah, it seems like whoever's closer to. Rava said, all the questions that Rav Zira asked to Rav Yasser about the words of Rav Yechon of the Mishnah in Gittin, and he said, well, Kiddushin and Chayiv, what are you going to say there? Rav Shimon Lakish Moisei Kumar Rav Yechon. Rav Lakish already asked these questions to Rav Yechon himself. Rav Yechon accepted the questions from Rav Lakish, that basically he said it was a good question, and he gave the answers that we gave, that Rav Yasser gave, the various answers we gave, he gave those answers.
Except that we tried to package this to Kedushin. Initially it was Gittin.
Yes, and then we said Kedushin as well.
Also, but then
we said that's Kinyonim.
But then is there a Chayiv by Kedushin that she can be Michael or Chayiv?
Well, there is a Kiddushin, she has to receive something.
But she can't be Michael.
No, she can't be Michael. She can't be Michael, but she has to receive it.
How's this that says Mahisnin?
It's the idea of being close to her. Let's talk about being close to her.
So you just throw it close and...
Yeah. Kedushin, we say, or could we get in Kedushin go to get in together? We said. We've got the same dinim. Karib law, that dinner helps. The din they say here, according to most Rishonim, Zrika, like throwing something close to someone, only drop on a din. There was sakin Arba Amas, or even 100 Amas as far as a get. And the reason it's Sakana because of Igud. Now, how's that private Kiddushin? But since they were attacking in Gerushin, and Gerushin and Kiddushin are compared, they didn't want to make a distinguish between them. So they said the same din with Gerushin and Kiddushin. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's see what we got here. Allah Gimel. Yeah, let's move on. Peah. Ein kaishin oisa b'magolos. Right, you don't start cutting peah with, it's a sort of a sickle of some kind. And ein oisa b'kardumais, you don't use these big sort of axes. Kadesh lo Yaakov, Israel, we don't need to start hitting everyone else. They'll start hitting each other with these sharp things. Right? And another din, Sholosh uv ayos, 3 occasions by Yom, there are in the day, where the poor people can go in the fields to take peah. B'shachar, in the morning, b'chatzos, midday, over mincha, and in the afternoon.
What's that word?
Uv ayos. Now you ask me where that's coming from, that word. Some have a guess at av ayos. We're saying it's like occasions. Occasions, something like that. That's how they translate it. Now, the Gemara will explain the word actually. Now, the Machais Tanai, what is this takana 3 times a day? Why 3 times a day the poor people were allowed to go in? Rav Gamliel, he said, they only said 3, they shouldn't be less than that, but you can add on to it. But because, remember that they have to still do their work in the field, right? They're harvesting the work to be done. They can't have people coming all day long. So there were 3 sessions when the people could come in. Rav Gamliel, you shouldn't have less than that. But if you want to do more, you can. Rabbi Kiva makes it no, he's not allowed to do more. You're not allowed to have more than 3 occasions in the day. Why? Because there might be ganovim, or if you have more than 3, then people will come. You'll tell your friend to come at a set time before anyone else gets there. So that's why they said you shouldn't do more. Shalbeis nemer. Now this din about separating peah from that which is growing. There were people who were very particular in this mitzvah. Shalbeis nemer, the people from Beis Nemer, family, they would cut their fields based on ropes. They would measure exact measures of that which was being cut, and they would cut that, and then leave peah based on the measure of what they've cut. So basically, they wouldn't do the whole field. They would divide the field into individual exact strips, and then they would leave peah at the end of each strip, right? But they worked according to the rope. They were very precise. But nice in peah, they would give peah from each row that they have been cutting. Now, what is this? I remember one. We have a pasuk in Avadia. Nivu means it's been uncovered. The hidden thoughts of Esav. So here as well, Ubayas is uncovering that the owner of the field is coming out of his field, out of his house, and he appears in the field. And in these times, you see the poor people, they see him there in order that they can take peah. Okay? So that's when the owner would come out. Whether the owner has to come out, that's also a question. Now, so why 3 times a day? Now, these are the poor women who are nursing their children. In the morning, the children are asleep. So that's the time when they can come out and take the peah. Lunchtime, that's the children who are poor, the children of the poor who sleep in the morning, and they come by the time they get up in the morning, it's midday. And in the afternoon is the older people who will go very slowly, they don't reach there until a later time of the day, and that's when the older people come along and get their peah. So these were the 3 occasions. Now, Rabbi Gamliel, he says, look, you must do less than 3. In Razalah, he said, if you want to do more, Masechet, you can have more occasions. Rabbi Kiva, he says, no, you don't do more. If he wants to do less, he can do less. But the halacha passed in the Rambam, not like Rabbi Gamliel, not Rabbi Kiva, you can't do less, you can't do more. Right? 3 times in the day, not more, not less. Zell. This question about whether the master has to be there, who says he has to be there? Some say, according to Yerushalmi, he doesn't have to be there. If he wants, he can just allow them to take even if he's not there. And some say they're not allowed to take unless it's in front of him. So there's a discussion on that. Now, so we said base Nema would have special strips and leave Peah at the end of each row. We mentioned them lignai, derogatory, or for praise. One way is bad. They gave 1 in 100. They didn't give 1 in 60. So that wasn't so good. But the praise, they would gather it with a rope. Every row, as soon as the row was finished, they left Peah. You don't have to wait till the whole field has been harvested. 5 things don't give Peah except within your field, right? Why it has to be at the end of your field. You don't want to steal from the poor. That the poor people are wasting their time. Well, when's the Peah going to be? So they know, end of the field. Because of the cheats, people think, oh, he's not going to leave Peah or whatever it is. The Torah said, don't finish off your Peah. And Rishimon goes, he explains all 5. Oh, look, there's no one in the field. You tell your poor friend, who's the poor man, who's your friend, you know, I'm going to leave it now, you come ready with your camels and take. So that's like stealing from the others. So that's why we said leave Peah at the end, so everyone knows when it's going to be given. The poor people are sitting there waiting, they're calling him all day, when's he going to leave Peah? Now, maybe. And so meanwhile, they can now go to another field. And they can come back when he finishes this field. What about the cheats? We don't at the end of the field to say, I already left Peah in the middle of the field. And ends up not leaving again. And he will choose the best for himself. And he'll take out the bad, if there's no fixed Peah, he can just leave whatever worse stuff and take the good stuff. He won't give Peah at the end of the field. When it's good, bad. So we say, right, leave it at the end. Right? Leave it at the end where there's good, bad, and everyone knows you can't start cheating people. Okay? People will say, look how he cut his field. He didn't leave the Peah. So if he left Peah in the middle, oh, you're right, people should really be judging favorably. Or maybe he left Peah in the middle. But people are not like that. They'll say, oh look, he didn't leave Peah. And that's the 4th reason. The Torah at the end of the way it says, the Torah says, don't finish off your field with cutting it. Leave the last bit going. Okay? So those are the 5 reasons why you leave Peah at the end of the field.
But it's very logical. Well, how would they know?
How would they know where to go? The Rashi says, Soif Sodeu is the end of the cutting. And it sounds like it doesn't have to be at the edge. But you have to leave it towards the end of your cutting. And then you can leave it even in the middle of your field or elsewhere. That's what Rashi says in Shabbos, based on some Rishonim. And so said the Mashma, so the Ravid. But the Rambam is Mashma, no, you have to leave the Peah at the end of the field. There should be a Mokum Kavua. The base Nemer, then they separated Peah from each row. Some say the reason is because by tying the rope, each row was like a field in its own right. And that's why they were able to leave Peah right at the end.
What would Rashi mean? Like you see by the head. The Peah means the corner.
Yeah.
What?
So there he says, it's Gemar HaKotze. Towards the end of the cutting, wherever that is.
Where's Rashi? In the head we don't say this.
I don't know.
Shabbos Kaf my haircut.
Shabbos Kaf Gimel. He says it's got to be Gemar Katsir, towards the end of the cutting, wherever that bit is. When you're finishing cutting, wherever that is. That's how Rashi learns. Okay. Nachri. A guy who's potter from mitzvahs, Shekatza Sadeu. He cut his field, V'achkach his Gaya. And then he became obligated in mitzvahs. He's already cut his field. Potter, he is exempt from. He is potter with his produce. Min haleket, min hashikot, or min hapeah. He's potter from all 3. He was potter at the time of the chiyuv. Right, at the time of cutting, he was a guy. Therefore, these things remain potter. Right. is learned from the V'kutz Rechem, this Kitzir Ad Sechem. V'tzechalep Asodacha, Leket Kitzircha. So Kutz Rechem is Bnei Yisrael, right? So the field was his binus when it's time of Kesira. It's exempt from all these things. Rabbi Yehuda argues, Machayah b'shikha, she'ein ha'shikha b'shasa. If a shikha takes place at a later stage, at the time when they're taking the bundles of the crop and putting it into the big stacks. So if then they forget one of their morim later on, you can't go back and take it. And since it became a ger before the bundles are being taken, so the time of the imur is already chayav this mitzvah. Now, Tanakama, however, said he's potter from shikha as well. We'll see why. Yo, son of Yehuda, it's good what Rav Yehuda said. Ma tamid Rabbana. Why do the Chachamim argue who hold your potter from shikha? Surely it's not chal. Shikha is not earlier on in Ksira. Shikha is later on. Rabbi Yosef, Rav Chizkiah, Rav Yehuda, B'Shem Shmuel. It says shechachta oimer basada. Basada, you'll forget shikha in the field. The shechachta kama. It's as if you're forgetting it. You're forgetting a kama when it's still connected to the ground. You forgot to cut it. You can't go back and cut it for yourself. Right, the din of shikha. You can't go back and go and take it. So he says there's two types of shikha here. There's oimer, the bundles, and the kama, that which is still standing. If there's shikha of the connected to the stuff, then there's bundles as well. If there isn't, then the other one doesn't apply. So a guy who can't say his field, and then he becomes a ger, at the time of the Ketzira, he was potter from shikha's kama, because he's not yet a ger. Therefore he's potter from the Oimrin one as well, even though at the time of the Imur, he already was a Jew at that time. Yisrael the guy should become. If a Jew and a guy had a partnership in the kama, that which was growing, and they cut it, and then they divide it up, Chelkei shel Yisrael chayev, the Jewish person's portion is chayev peah, Chelkei shel guy is potter. Rav Chizkiah b'Shem Rav Yirmiyah, V'amach lekes. He says this day of the Brisa, where Jews chelek is chayev and peah, is not so clear cut. There are Tanoim who hold that also the chelek of Yisrael is potter from peah, because there's a shuttvus with a guy. Some people hold the Jews chelek is also potter from peah. Okay. We find, of course, where do we find a patur where there's a shuttvus? Any offers? Chala. Possibly chala. Another one? B'chad behema. Yeah, b'chad behema doesn't apply if you have a shuttvus with a guy, yeah? That's when they get all the farmers. No, even the valley, they get all the farmers. There's no din kedusha at all. If a guy, that's why every Jewish farmer who's got a behema tahira, whatever it is, they always have a shuttvus with a guy to stop any din of hekdesh, basically, of peta, of pidyon, behema tahira, which is a common, we can't do anything with. Okay, where are we? Halacha hey, yeah? Now, in the earlier Mishnah we said, Tzur which was in the Rishus of the guy at time of Kesira, even though he becomes a ger later, he's potter mleket shikha peah, because it was potter when the chiyuv came about, which was when it was cut. Now, we're talking about hekdesh now. Tzur of hekdesh is a potter from matanas aniyim. And we'll see what's the din with tzur, which was in the time of hekdesh, and then it was redeemed. So hekdesh, if a Bala Sada is magdish, he makes his field holy, comma, when it's still connected to the ground. Or pada, and then he redeemed it while it's comma, while it's still connected to the ground. And then he cuts it. Chaim. His Chaim leket shikha peah is now patur, because in the beginning it was hekdesh, because at the time when it was cut, already, that was the chiyuv, he'd already redeemed it by then. And also, if he's magdish it betalosh, let's say, when it's detached, Amorim, when he's already made it into bundles, or pada, and then he redeems it, while it's Amorim in bundles, chayev. He's chayev shikha peah, because at the time of the cutting, he'd not yet made a hekdesh. So therefore there was the chiyuv there, and the chiyuv now. But if he's magdish it kava, when it's connected, or pada Amorim, and he only redeems it after it's been cut, then patura. He's part of leket shikha peah. Why? When the chiyuv comes about, leket shikha peah is the time of cutting, and then it was patur, haisa patura, and then even though afterwards he got redeemed, the new chiyuv doesn't come about again. You follow that? So there was what? What? Yeah. Not here. I don't know. I haven't seen it. So here, what we say that let's see if I see anything here. So we're saying, well, this is according to everyone. So as far as hekdesh is concerned, if there was a patur earlier on, Maybe the guy got special psukim, kutz rechem and all that. You don't have that here. So what we say now, if there was a patur earlier on, then now comes a chiyuv, then there's the patur earlier on. But if it was cut, whichever way around it was, what was it? If it was kama, it depends when the chiyuv came about, right? Well, if it was patur at the time of cutting, then even though later on it gets redeemed, there's no chiyuv. You make things hekdesh before the third growth, which is mentioned with olives, for example, and it's got a din of pre. So there's no chiyuv maestros yet, right? And then you redeem it before we reached oilas maestros. Chayav, and then you're chayav maestros. At the time when it reaches that stage, which is the chiyuv maestros, they were redeemed. And that means also if you were magdish them after you already had the stage of maestros, and then you redeem it. Chayavim, you're chayav maestros. Because when you're making hekdesh, there was already a chiyuv trumas of maestros when it was a third grown, before it became hekdesh. But if you made a hekdesh before it's ripened, or gemara and a gizbar, and it still goes in the stage of the gizbar, in his rishus, when it reaches that third, that oinas maestros, and then later on you go and redeem it, Peturin is part of why? When the chiyuv came about for maestros, Peturin, they were in the hekdesh stage then, and they remain part of the new chiyuv doesn't come about. Okay, now the din of this second case in our Mishnah is very similar to what we find in Masechet Chala, and we're going to look at the double wording. The Mishnah said twice, once over here and once in Chala, right? So why is that? So let's see. Rabbi Yoina Rechir Rishon ben Levi b'Shem Bapadayo Achas lemiruach v'achas shlish. Now what that means? One Mishnah is talking about fruit that was detached in Rishus Hekdesh at the time of Miruach Bekri. Remember when it's all stacked up together, smoothing out, right? That is the Gemar Malacha of crops in the field. That is also a Maisa obligation, right? When it's smoothed out, right? So that's one stage when it can get a chiyuv of maestros. The other Mishnah is talking about fruit, which was Rishus of Hekdesh when it was connected to the ground, when it reached a third growth, Shlish Gidula, right? And that's when maestros starts. So we have two separate stages where it requires maestros obligations. So there's not just one point, there's actually 2 points. What's the best way of putting it? 2 points, the 2 stages, 2 triggers, thank you. 2 triggers that can cause the maestros obligation. A third growth and miruach. Now we need both Mishnahs to tell us that in both cases, Peres would be potter from maestros, whether it was hekdesh at the time of the third, or if it was hekdesh at the time of the smoothing out, the miruach. Okay? So let's see. They just say over here. Some say the 2 times are learned from 2 psukim. Towards Zarecha, hekdesh is not Zarecha, and Master Degancha. B'mamayit miruach of hekdesh. Okay. Some sides.
Each one's matim. One is
Digancha, one is
Zera for
Digancha.
third,
Yeah.
and Digancha
Digancha,
for digging.
He's the Shas Digan. He says here, in some cases, Baruch itself is Machayev the crops in Trumas and Maestros, and you can't eat it Achilas Arai after Rias B'nei Abayis, but the P'tur of Tvur, which is Nigma B'Shus Hekdesh, is the Miruach is the time of Chiyav of the Tvur to patrick from Trumas and Maestros if it had Miruach at the time of Hekdesh. Miruach causes the Tvur to have Trumas and Maestros, okay, even though it comes later in Rias B'nei Abayis, okay. Let's see. It's a similar stage to the Shas Chiyav of Chala, right? It's when the dough is rolled. Yeah, Gilgal Ha'isa. That's when the Gemar Malacha of Chala is. That's when, that's not depend on when it's growing in the field, it's when it goes through the dough. So Rabbi Yossi Amar, let's see. Rabbi Yossi says, now, Rabbi Baba Chavraya Amri, the Chaverim said, Achas le'miruach, ve'achas le'shlish. And one of the Mishnah, so we've got Chala and we've got Peah. He says one was referring to the smoothing and one was referring to the third. But they didn't say which is which. Rabbi Baba Farish, he gave the answer, the Chala is le'meruach, is that later stage. Of our Peah, which is what we have, is l'shlish, is for the din of the third. He said it's that way round. Now, based on what we said, Our Mishnah patters the Tvua from Maestros if it grew a third at the time of Hekdesh, even though it was redeemed later on. And it's mashma, even though it grows afterwards, right, another 2/3, they're potter from Maisa, because at the time of the third, it was with Hekdesh. So Masechet Rabbi Kiva, our Mishnah's view of Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Kiva, he said, we only look at the first third, and if it's ptur then, it's potter the whole thing. There's machlokes Rabbi Kiva and the Chachamim in the following brisa. A field produces crops a third in while the guy is in domain. Ulakacha Mimena Yisrael. Then the Jew buys it, and that's when it carries on growing. The Kiva Potter is Potter from Maisa, because you follow the first third. That's Rabbi Kiva. The Chachamim said no. Ataysefer Chaim. Anything that grew later in the Jewish person's domain is Chaim Maisa. The first third is exempt, the rest is Chayev. So just like they argue with Tvua, he's grown a third with a guy and then the Jew buys it, so also they argue if it's the third B'Shus Hekdesh and then you redeem it. My Keduv. So what is the din then? The Mishnah is that like, so you're telling me our Mishnah is like Rabbi Kiva? It's not the Chachamim? So he says, well, you don't have to say our Mishnah is just like Rabbi Kiva. We can explain it 2 ways. Tifta, we can say, I Rabbi Kiva. But Machlokes, we say, yeah, it's Rabbi Kiva, the Mishnah is Rabbi Kiva. And there's an argument about it, according to the Chachamim, the Tosefos, the extra Yochai Maestros. Or you can say, I Kedivra Kol, because the Mishnah is according to everyone. It's where basically, as soon as you cut it straight after you redeemed it. It never grew anymore. You with me? It didn't grow anymore. You're not Chayiv on the Tosefos, because there is no Tosefos. Everyone will agree, as soon as you redeemed it, you cut it. It's not grown anymore in your domain. Therefore, you're potter from Maestros, even according to the Chachamim. Okay? Hello, Chavav. How are you doing? Mishalike Peah. V'Ama, Harezu Leish Pliniani. He says, you know what? I'm collecting Peah now. I'm picking it up for so and so. Another ani. Rabbi Lezer says you can do it. Right? You've acquired the Peah. The Chachamim said no. Give it to the first ani. Yeah, you can't hold on to it. Right? You can't hold on to it. We'll see why. We'll see. Now, what about Lechet Shikha Peah? Lechet Shikha Peah Shal Nachri Chai B'Maseh. Now, Lechet Shikha Peah Nachri. Now, a Nachri is potter from their mitzvahs. To wherever he separates, I mean, it hasn't got a din of Lechet Shikha Peah. That's got an exemption from Maestros at all. Elam Kain Hivki. Unless he was mafkir it, if he's mafkir it for anyone, then it's potter from Maseh. Right? Hefka stuff is potter from Maseh. But let's say he has it, and I don't know, and you buy it off him, it's Chaim Maseh. There's no exemption for a guy's Lechet Shikha Peah. He may not separate it. There's no exemption from Maseh in that. Okay, so the first din of our Mishnah, we said you're collecting Peah for another poor person. He said, now, who are we talking about? Who is collecting Peah for another poor person? He said, but Balabais Oshe Nechleku. He said, the Balabais is a rich man, as Machlokes Rulez and the Chachamim. So the owner of the field was rich. Okay? So he can't take it for himself. So what does he do? He takes the Peah for another ani. So it's Machlokes Rulez and Chachamim. According to the Chachamim, you can't get it for yourself, therefore, you cannot acquire it for another ani. Right? Okay? You can't get it for yourself, therefore you can't acquire it for another ani. Aber Babalabais ani, if the owner of the field is poor, he took for another ani, then it does work. Why? He is entitled to take Peah himself. Now the truth is, he's not allowed to take Peah from his own field. You know that any owner of a field was the knas. Can't take from his own field. But if he's poor, he can go to other people's field. And that's enough for him to be able to take for another army. Okay? So what have we got here? We're talking about, the first opinion said, yeah, he can be rich. Rabbi Lezer. The other opinion said, no. If he's poor, then it works. Now, we find in Bavli, Rabbi Lezer's reason why the rich man can take Peah was if he wants, he can make everything ownerless. Be mafkir everything, and then he's not rich anymore. Do you remember that, Rabbi Sai from Bavli? He can be mafkir everything and become a poor person. That's Bavli Peah Daf test. Yeah, I know Machloek is with Chaim. But here, Miga de Zachir in Afshei, Zachir de Chavrei. That's all over well in Bavli. Now also the reason why in Bavli it brings the idea of Taifes Lebalchav, but Makim Shechab La'achirim. You can't take for someone else when someone else will lose out as a result. You want to save your bus seat for your friend when all the following people are going to lose out. This is the whole question, right? So here, you can't be Zachar something where there's a Chia, where it's a Chia to others. And this is a Chav to other Aniyim. And Gemara says, you can't be Zachar to your friend, it's like it did in Shlichus. You've got to be in that Parsha to be able to do it. You spell it? You've got to be Torah Shlichus. So an Eved Knani can't do Gittin and Kiddushin. He's not in the Parsha of Gittin and Kiddushin. Right? Then in Schia, you can't be Zercha for your friend in something which you yourself can't get. You're a rich man. You can't get Peah. So you can't start acquiring it for someone else. That seems to be more the Yerushalmi aspect of it, right? It's a din in Shlichus, as opposed to Bavli. So what we got here? We said, Zacha. Okay. Now also the question is, the Ani, we said a poor person who has his own field has to leave Peah for other people. He can't take it for himself. And Rashi says the Bala Sada, maybe if he's a poor person, maybe he can't take for another Ani. So the question is, if he's poor, the owner of the field, can he take for another Ani? I said, well, he can go to other people's fields. Yeah, but if it's in Shlichus, does he be able to have to take here to acquire for someone else? But he can't take here. Yeah, but he can't take here only because of a knas, really. So that's the question as well. How far do we go as to say, yes, he is in the parsha of taking Peah for someone else? All right.
We don't ask
how Roy is he to take, huh?
We don't say how is he an Ani if he owns...
Well, he owns the field, but it doesn't mean the field's doing any good, right? So there we are. Rav Zira said, they all said the same thing. If you can take something for yourself, you can be Zaychet for others. You can acquire something Mitzia of Hefka, and therefore just like you can acquire it for yourself, when you lift it up, you can acquire it for your friend. Rabbi Yochanan, the Tanina Tama, we've learned, if your young children, or they find something, after Shivase Kananim, or Mitzias Ishta, where your wife finds, or Elu Shalai, they belong to you. Mitzias Benai Bita Gedolim, the adults, after Shivase El Evrim, who are independent, Mitzias Ishta Shigesha, the divorced wife, Af Bishalai Nasalam Sivas, no, you pay the Ksuva, they are independent, and Elu Shalai, it goes to them. The din of the older children is theirs. That's like but then they're independent. They're not relying on your table. They don't come back to you every Pesach and Sukkot, right? If, however, they're standing on your table, then whatever they find goes to you. So they have a yard, huh? What?
Such mit solchen Chavayros.
Which one here?
A kind is automatisch.
They are all, they can't be acquiring things on themselves.
Das heißt, ich solchen Chavayros automatisch.
Maybe it's automatic. So what we say now, if they are tafel lavian, mitziyas on shalom, then everything goes to you. The reason is, though they have a yad, they may have a yad to be zeichen things, but mistama, their kavanah, they're older, but they may have a yad, yeah? But mistama, their kavanah is to be giving everything for their father. We're talking about adults here, right? They're eating at your table and they're adults. And they could decide, I'm keeping it for myself. We say, no, that's not their das. Their intention is to give it to their father because he's giving them all the food. They're eating at his table. So when they picked it up for him. So you see another opinion who says you can be zeichen something for someone else. Now, where do we see Yerushalmi Levi? Yerushalmi Levi Abba. Balabais Asher Nechleku. The Machlekes is about Balabais Asher, our Mishnah. Aval Balabais Ani. With the poor Balabais Ma'ach Shuroi Lita, he's able to take, okay, maybe not in this field, but in other fields. Zacha, he can acquire it for another Ani. Right? Because he can take it for himself. Now there is another opinion. Tani we learned in the Brisa. You hire a worker to do work wherever you ask him to do. Mitzia, if he finds things, Shabbalabais. during his work, he goes to you. You're hiring him for all work. So picking up a Metzia goes to you. He asked on this price, well, wait a minute, if the worker wants to cancel, he's a chayzer, but he can go back on it, even before he finishes. And you want to say wherever he finds goes to the balabais. Since he can cancel, he's not meshubah to the balabais. He's not a servant here. He's not ein yad ki yad rabbi. Why should the balabais get wherever he finds? Now the truth is, ein yad pod is not like the balabais. But in a stam, his intention is to acquire it for the balabais because you're paying him for all work. That would include picking up Metzias. But he's not worse than someone else who can acquire things for his friend. You have to say Rish Lakish holds a person can't be zeicha for his friend with a Metzia. Not like that by Ryan. So okay, Rabbi Lakish asked this question wherever he asked. Now, Rabbi Yasa asked on this raya from Rish Lakish, why do we need to come on to that, what he said about the worker? Have we not already heard who said, it's Palgun. Actually, there's machlokes about it. Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Adam Zoich Lachvar Metzia. You can't acquire Metzia for your friend. And Rish Lakish Amar Adam Zoich Lachvar Metzia. So we see quite clearly Rish Lakish holds. Quite clearly. You don't have to be medayik from his question on the brisa. He says clearly you can't be zeicha with a Metzia for your friend. Okay. So the Gemara comes back to situation. Okay. It comes back to a matter of acquiring money for your friend. Even when you've got shlichus, let's just bring some of our Ryan. Rabbi Difa Amar, he said, it's Palgan, Rabbi Yana, Rabbi Yossi, we have machlekes. Chad one said, Haroy Lito Zacha. So, if you are, in order to acquire for your friend, you have to be able to take the thing for yourself. You hear that? You have to be able to take it for yourself to acquire it, like the poor person who's zeicha b'peah for another ani. Fine. But Chad the other one said, Haroy Liten Zeicha. Anyone who's Zeicha the item, if you Zeicha in it, you can give it to others. Had it been yours, you couldn't be Zeicha for others. Now, what is this machlekes here? Madam Haroy Liten, the one who says, if you can take it for yourself. Liten is anyone who can acquire it. Kol shekain Lito. Even someone who's not Ra'oi can give it to others, because he can give it. If he's fitting to take it, he can acquire it for himself, he can acquire it for others. So if you can acquire it if you can just give it by acquiring whoever, then you can definitely give it to others. But if you however, the other one says no. If you can acquire it yourself, you've got to be ro'oi to acquire it. So this loshon of litain or little, right? You see that? So the other one says no, you've got to be able to acquire it in order to be able to give it to others. Little, the one who says you got to be able to take it. If you're not roy, lite loy. He won't be zeicha for others if he himself can't be zeicha the item. So he says here, in order to be a shliach, you got to be b'teiros of that parsha. So an Eved Knani is not b'teiros kitin or kedushim. So you can't be a shliach for receiving a get for a woman. And it's machlekes, when is a person like in the Torah of that Indian that he's been sent to do? So if you hold a roy litein zeicha, a shliach is shliach in this because roy litein, that he can give a get. So even though now he's being zeicha for his friend with something which he himself is not doing, at the end of the day he is shliach in this, he can be a shliach. According to the day of roy lito, a person is not in that Torah's Indian unless he's roy to do this ma'aser which was sent. And if he wants to be zeicha for his friend with something, the shlich is not a shlich unless he can be zeicha in it himself. That's the lashon they have. There is a similar sugya in Bavli gets into Samach Beis about shlich and so he gets. Okay, I think we stop here, Rabbi Isai.